Hi, you're with Bear Friday, Body Language, and today we're looking at Groves versus Smith for the upcoming World Boxing Super Series final, Muhammad Ali Trophy. And hopefully I'm going to raise an issue or a point that other people haven't so far. In this video, I'm going to suggest that Callum Smith has a worse injury than George Groves' dislocated shoulder, that he's been suffering with a hand injury or hand injuries, that he's got bad hands, and this is going to be an issue in the upcoming fight. And I believe that his future plan is to fight Groves, maybe win, maybe defend the title once, and then quit boxing forever. I'll explain why. First, let's go back to August the 1st. In this interview with Boxing Social, George Groves talks to Rob Tebbett. I think Boxing Social are doing really great work at the moment. And Rob asks him about his shoulder injury and the delay to the final.
The reason why it was delayed, obviously, was because your injury against Chris Eubank Jr. Last time I caught up with you and Shane, you said that you were going under new physiotherapy. An assumption? What assumption?
That it was delayed for my injury.
Would you like to clear that up for me then, if it's an assumption?
Well, it might have been my injury, it might not have been, it might have been Callum Smith. If it was because of my injury, I would have been replaced, wouldn't I, with Chris Eubank Jr.
So already you hear he's mentioned it might not be his injury that caused the delay, it might be Callum Smith's, and then he sort of slurs that, he sort of stops what he's saying there. Let's just take that again.
It might not have been, it might have been Callum Smith. If it was because of my injury, I would have been replaced, wouldn't I, with Chris Eubank Jr. So I wasn't.
So all the time here, George is looking down to his left, over to his left, which indicates he's having an internal dialogue. He's thinking about things he's seen, remembering things, and deciding how to talk about them. He's not making this up. This isn't construction. This is from memories.
If it was to do with my injury, they would have announced a delay straight away, wouldn't they? Like they did with Usyk. When Usyk's elbow got injured, they instantly announced that they're going to postpone for the final. So I think it could be an assumption. Who knows why it took them so long to get a deal together.
And here's that cheeky smile. So who knows, but he knows, or he knows something. There's that smile of duper's delight where he's smiling because he's held back something. And you could see that purse of the lips and the shrug of the shoulders, which was his acknowledgement of that this is as far as I'm prepared to talk about it. That's as much as I'm going to say. And he closes his mouth.
Assumption. Who knows why it took them so long to get a deal together.
Yeah. In a sort of satisfied, that's all you're getting.
Might be.
So I wonder if his ability to voice his opinions and thoughts on this are being dampened in some way. Maybe there's some contractual reason why he can't talk about his opponent's injuries. I'm not sure.
They might have thought I wasn't fit to fight. Callum Smith might not have been fit to fight.
Again, he mentions Callum Smith.
Smith might not have been fit to fight.
Not being fit to fight. He says it might have been that he's been injured, but it might be that Callum Smith is not fit to fight. So what he means there is it might be that I was injured, but it's not. It's because Callum Smith was injured. Check it out.
They might have thought I wasn't fit to fight. Callum Smith might not have been fit to fight.
In fact, you can even see him shaking his head when he says...
They might have thought I wasn't fit to fight. Callum Smith might not have been fit to fight.
When he says they might have thought I might not be fit to fight, he even shakes his head to dismiss the idea.
They might have thought I wasn't fit to fight. Callum Smith might not have been fit to fight. They might have thought about doing a final against, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Rocky Fielding, and then thought, without the world title that he's just recently won. So they might have thought that's not going to work so well. So let's just put it on the back burner, sort some other stuff out, and get the job done. So yeah, that.
I wonder what it was, that other stuff they had to sort some sort of stuff out. He said he wasn't so sure about how to enunciate his thoughts there. Again, I feel he's being stifled in some way.
We need to nip that in the bud. Is that we've been hanging around for me, because that's not the case. Not the case at all.
And finally, he puts his chin up in a confident position to state again that it's not him that they've been waiting around for.
Get the job done. So yeah, that I need to nip that in the bud. Is that we've been hanging around for me, because that's not the case. Not the case at all. I've been pushing for a date for a very long time. I need to nip that in the bud. Is that
that chin raise is defiance as well. Defiance there.
Job done. So yeah, that I need to nip that in the bud. Is that we've been hanging around for me, because that's not the case. Not the case at all. I've been pushing for a date for a very long time.
So that was August the 1st, some time ago now, but I noticed that I watch a lot of the boxing interviews, and I noticed that in that interview, and it set my mind ticking. So I noticed something that sparked my memory of the Smith-Holzken fight, and in the semi-final, Smith outboxed Nicky Holzken most of the fight, performed well, but he didn't seem to have the killer power that he's kind of known for. And I wondered to myself if there was anything up in that fight. He didn't seem to want to finish it. And at the time I thought it's because he just wants to cruise through and make the final without any injuries, without taking any risks. And that's a sensible strategy. But maybe there was another reason. And I remembered something that was said in the corner at the end of the 11th round, going into the 12th. So let's take a look at that and see what you think.
In other forms of combat.
Okay, how much is it? Okay, huh? Hands all right? No? Both of them? Okay.
So did you catch that? Joe Gallagher clearly asks him, hands all right? And just take a look at Smith's body language there. He doesn't look like the man who's about to go into the final round of a fight he's going to win. He looks a little bit demoralised. This is him walking back to the corner. Again, he's got his head down. He's not in a good mental space there, is he? I mean, he's just been through 11 gruelling rounds, but head down as he walks back to the corner. Not a positive frame on his body there.
Okay, how much is it? Okay, huh? Hands all right? No? Both of them? Okay.
No, hands are not all right. He gives this look. It's almost like resignation, isn't it? And if you're about to go into the final round, and that's the picture coming from the corner, you might imagine that guy's about to go out and lose the fight, but put up a good show. You know, oh well. He's kind of accepting his fate in a way. Smith goes on to win the fight comfortably. So where's this look coming from? Why are these slumped shoulders? Well, he's already directly told you his hands are feeling bad, they're sore. And when Gallagher replies, he doesn't inject him with confidence, he also just accepts it. So it's something they've known about before this fight. It's not a new development, it's something they expected. Let's check it one more time.
Okay, huh? Hands all right? No? Both of them? Okay. Big breath. Last round now, all right? Box lovely there, Callum. You'll have some lovely shots.
And now he's telling him that he boxed lovely, and he did box lovely. But as we heard, his hands are not all right. It's something they were looking at. He asked him about it. He didn't come and tell him my hands are hurting. You know, it's something they've known about going into the fight, and it's something that's troubling him. And it's affecting his performance, because I believe Callum could probably have hit harder and taken Holzken out if his hands had not been hurting.
Racking right uppercut, and then look at the defensive movement to avoid the counter left hook.
I mean, that's a lovely shot, isn't it? But does it have the venom and the power? I know it's the 11th round. I know it's been a long fight. But does it have the venom and the knockout power?
Both of them? Okay. Big breath. Last round now, all right? Box lovely there, Callum. You'll have some lovely shots down the side.
Racking right uppercut.
And Holzken takes the punch and carries on boxing.
Took from Holzken.
The Muhammad Ali Trophy
When Joe
is
Gallagher
at
asked the
stake.
question,
This
how are your
is
hands?
the 12th
Callum
and
Smith kind of
final
shrugged. So perhaps he suffered
round.
hand damage during the course of this contest.
There you hear the commentator, or you kind of hear the commentator underneath the announcer. He's clocked what Gallagher was talking about, and he asks the question, has he suffered hand damage during this fight? And I think, no, I think it's something he's taken into the fight and they're aware of, because I think there'd be a bit more of an energetic reaction in the corner if he'd recently damaged his hand in the fight. Maybe they'd suggest to box differently, maybe they'd suggest something, talk about it more in the corner, and not just acknowledge that it hurts and just say, well, oh yeah, okay then, get on with it. I think they expected it. So what do you think? Do you think Callum Smith has bad hands? Do you think he's carrying an injury that he's bringing into this final? Do you think the final was delayed not only because of George Groves' shoulder, as George Groves himself says, but also because of a Callum Smith injury? And with all that in mind, how will Callum Smith enter this final, and what will he seek to do in boxing afterward? Just want to take a look at a few more things in this press conference. It was 3 weeks ago now, at the end of August, and both boxers clearly are midway through training camps. They look a bit drained, a bit tired. Both had a few shots to the face in sparring, and of course Callum has been using his hands recently. So let's take a look.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the official press conference.
I just want to point out this right at the start. Okay, this is right at the start. They're just getting their stuff together. And you can see Callum Smith is pouring water. He pours some for himself, and then for Joe Gallagher. So Callum Smith is quite happily pouring a bit of water for himself and for Joe Gallagher as trainer. There doesn't seem to be much off here, but if you notice, he's using his left hand to pour the water. And as far as I know, Callum Smith is not a southpaw. And here, it's not much, but it would feel more natural to most people to use their right hand to reach over and pour this water into Gallagher's glass, but he does that, which is a kind of awkward, unnatural movement, and Gallagher's watching it. Now, is Gallagher watching the water, or is he watching the hand? And why is Callum Smith using his left hand exclusively?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And they get started with some talking.
St George Groves faces Callum Mundo Smith, live on ITV Box Office pay-per-view.
When they're saying his name, he's stroking his hair and doing a bit of self-touching, which is quite normal behaviour. It's self-confidence building, self-assurance, and they're talking about his name. He might feel a little bit, I don't know, some people don't like the attention as much as others. You know, some people look down a bit and touch their hair when people are talking about them. That's normal. But he does it all with his left hand again.
Live on ITV Box Office pay-per-view. At stake.
And as they get settled in and this guy carries on talking, Callum has his arms folded, which again to me is a bit of a defensive posture, and it allows him to tuck his hands in underneath his arms in an even more safe position. And he does a little bit more self-touching again with his left hand.
Best of British. Callum Smith has extended his record to a perfect 24 wins out of 24 by beating Eric Skoglund and Nicky Holtzken.
Here he's drinking with his left hand.
Legendary company. On the top table then, George Groves, his trainer Shane McGuigan, Callum Smith, his trainer Joe Gallagher, and first we'll hear from...
And covering his face.
...the Camosa Chief Boxing Officer, Callum Smith.
Callum Smith does some talking, and the next time this shot cuts back to the wide, we see that Smith is now holding one hand in the other.
Left-hand side, I believe we have the best challenger on the planet, the number one across the division in challengers, and someone who has risen over the last years against...
Literally massaging that right hand with his left.
Some very strong names, and has obviously progressed throughout the tournament to the final, and in Callum Smith we have the first finalist.
And covering it and hiding it.
On my right, the man to beat at the moment in the super middleweight division, bar none. Someone who has achieved the dream of all boxers.
And then it subconsciously moves on to his other hand. So again, I think it's both hands are an issue.
To become champion of the world, having suffered so many setbacks in his career, has proven really what a fighter is all about. George.
And there's this look again. I mean, he might be a bit bored, he might just be thinking about something else, but he's looking down and he looks a little sullen. You know, it's not the confidence that I expect to see.
George Groves needs no further introduction, but is someone...
I don't know if you saw this, but there was a tiny twitch of the eyebrow. Just look at Callum Smith when George Groves is mentioned.
For introduction.
Yeah, it's so tiny, it's so little.
George Groves needs no further introduction, but is someone...
And a lick of the lips. So this has nothing to do with the hands, the eye movement and the lick of the lips. You know, he's looking forward to getting in with Groves, and you know, maybe that little eyebrow raise was a little twitch of confidence.
Someone who we're very proud to have in the final, and together with Callum, we believe...
Now he's rooting round in his mouth, which is usually a quite different sign. Maybe he's thinking about what he's going to say next and what he's about to say.
We'll create absolute fireworks in Jeddah on Friday, November 28th. It's been a long road. We've certainly had some injuries.
And now he's leaning on his hands and he's holding them tightly while Callum talks about injuries.
Setbacks, but we've got the final.
And that little look again comes in, that face of resignation. We all think Callum is talking about George Groves' injury setbacks, but he says there has been some injury setbacks. He doesn't say an injury setback, he says some. And so that includes Callum Smith.
We all wanted, the final you all demanded, and the final we will now deliver in a territory...
There was some really uncomfortable twitching of the face there.
...which has never seen boxing before.
In fact, now he's wiping his nose with his finger while still holding his hand. He's in, you know, that's not comfortable, confident body language.
At this level.
Let's have a look at when Smith is doing some talking.
But George, there, a comfortable night, he expects.
Yeah, it's his opinion. You know, I'm in a good place and feeling good. Training's going really well, and
you see him lift his hands out of that underarm position there briefly. Callum Smith, while he's doing this talking, he likes to gesticulate. People like to talk with their hands and move them about. But for Callum, in this particular instance, he returns them to this shielded, safe position all the time.
It's been a long time coming, but like you say, I'm finally sitting here in the press conference for my world title fight, which I feel, you know, I've been ready for quite a while now. And
there also seems to be a little nervousness in his voice, and that might be because he's on the big stage talking in front of lots of people, but it might be this thing I'm talking about, this internal dialogue going on between I'm going to come across as confident and ready for this fight, and I'm not going to show any weakness, but inside your mind you're thinking don't show the weakness, and that means you're thinking show the weakness, and it's kind of like an internal battle that you have to keep under wraps, a bit like playing poker. And that's normal for most boxing head-to-heads and press conferences. There's a bit of that going on. But here, as I suggest, I think Callum's got something specific on his mind.
I say training's going very well, and you know, the fight with George has been talked about for a long time, and it's a fight that I've always liked for myself. It's a fight I've always been confident of winning. And
interesting, when he says confident of winning, he physically bats his hand away, which is a clear display of confidence.
For the fight I've always been confident of winning, and
he feels he can return what George has just said with a simple I'm confident of winning. A little bit of a tennis stroke there.
I finally got my chance now to go out and prove that and become a world champion, which I feel I'm more than good enough to do.
For those that might say this is a step, you're going to have to step to another level to...
So I'm just going to break in there and say I think he does feel confident. I think when he's on his top form, Callum Smith believes he will beat George Groves. And if you've got an injury or something like that, it's sometimes easy to forget it and just to say, you know, me, the way I play, I'm good at this. And then, oh yeah, but I've got that injury, you know.
have to step to another level to compete with George, let alone to beat him? What would you say?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I don't expect anything different. No, a world title fight. That's when big fighters raise the game. I think George knows that himself. I think his career best performance probably come in his first world title fight, although he didn't get the decision. But
so he's doing a lot of this gesticulating with his hands, returning them to that safe position every time.
But I'm expecting the toughest fight in my career.
But again, notice that's his left hand that he's using, not his right, which is firmly tucked there under the left.
I'm training for that, and I've always felt that. I've always rose to the occasion, and I feel this fight will be no different.
And then I just want to skip on to a specific point that he made a bit later, where here he's going to say that the fight's about him and his journey, and this is where I feel that, as I said at the start of the video, I think Callum Smith wants to win this fight. I think he believes he can. I think his hand trouble is going to be maybe numbed, maybe, a couple of those cortisone injections, whatever you do, so that you can get through the fight. And the long-term implication of having hand damage and not being able to fight many more fights in your career, I think he's taken that into consideration. I think he's understood it, and he believes that it's his time now to win a world title and to cash in and maybe get out of boxing. And that's kind of been forced on him by an injury, and he doesn't want to go on for years and years and years, and I don't think he feels he can if he's got bad hands. So I think they've made a plan. I think they've thought about this in advance. I think he's assessed his future, and so when he says this is all about me and my journey, I think he's got that journey in mind as to where he wants to go with things. Let's check this out.
That play into things?
Not at all, to be honest with you. I think that was a long time ago, and me and Paul are completely different fighters. We're not unlike each other, so his win over Paul's got as much relevance as it has any of his other wins. Like I say, we're not unlike each other, and it'd be nice to get revenge, but from a selfish point of view, this fight's about me and about my journey and about me becoming a world champion, and after that, no, that's nothing to do with it, but this fight's about me and my goal and my career.
So he finishes that by going, my career? It's that nervous inflection at the end of the sentence, and when he says anything after that and shakes the head, he doesn't tell us what his plans are for after that, to unify, to dominate. It's almost like anything after that is a bonus. My chance to win a world title, and anything after that, we'll just see how far my hands take me.
From a selfish point of view, this fight's about me and about my journey and about me becoming a world champion, and after that, no, that's nothing to do with it, but this fight's about me and my goal and my career.
It's nothing to do with it. It's nothing. Is there nothing after that? It's not to do with this anyway. So that's my thought on it. I might be wrong, I might be reading into this in totally the wrong way, but I've given you a couple of points there. The George Groves interview where he specifically said Callum Smith is injured and it's the reason that the fight has been delayed. The fight itself where both trainer and boxer accepted the hand injury and didn't even chat about it, just said, right, your hand's hurt, oh, damn it, that's happened again. And the fact that Callum didn't finish and the fact that Callum didn't finish that fight with power shots in the last round, and the fact that Callum seemed to hold back on the full impact of those punches in the later rounds of that fight, plus a few indications here of him using his left hand, hiding his right hand. This is a really interesting bit, and we don't get to see his hands very much here, but he talks about George Groves' injury, and let's see what he says.
Happened, I kind of was worried that it'd keep him out the final, and without George in the final, it takes the world title out the final as well, and that was one of the main incentives for entering the tournament. But I can't base my chances and base my game plan on facing an injured George Groves. I've got to expect a fully fit George Groves, and I believe he is. I don't believe he rushed back just to satisfy me or anyone else. I think he's the champion, he's the man in the driving seat, so I do believe he'll be healed, and that's what I want. I want to beat the best in the world and want to become the best in the world, and I believe by beating George I'll do that.
Fine.
That all sounds about right, doesn't it? But it's interesting that he mentions he doesn't think he's rushed back. This idea of rushing back wasn't put to him.
Opponents suffer an injury like that, and you're going to face him next. Does that give you renewed optimism, hope, knowing how serious an injury like that might be?
So the question didn't include rushing back, but Callum raises that as an idea that, You know, he thinks George is fully healed and has not rushed back. Well, he probably knows that. But what does that say about what he's thinking about his own injuries? Does he think he's being rushed back? And for him, you know, he's not the champion. He doesn't have those options. This is his big chance, and he's just got to take it as it comes up. Let's just hear him one more time.
Final, and without George in the final, it takes the world title out the final as well, and that was one of the main incentives for entering the tournament. But I can't base my chances and base my game plan on facing an injured George Groves. I've got to expect fully fit George Groves, and I believe he is. I don't believe he rushed back just to satisfy me or anyone else. I think he's the champion. He's the man in the driving seat. So
he says he's the man in the driving seat. So who's being forced to do what here? I think Callum is probably not as prepared as George Groves in terms of injury rehabilitation.
I do believe he'll be healed, and that's what I want.
And then finally, let's just take a look at this head-to-head. It's not much of a head-to-head, they're sort of just standing there for the pictures, and as you can clearly see, both men are drained and tired, especially George Groves, from their recent training camps that they're midway through and they're sparring. But this is the point where the hands have to be raised, and they ask them to raise the hands. Callum, he's fortunate to be placed where he is, because he's now being asked to raise his left hand, and his right can again stay hidden. And that's just total chance. That's not because he asked for it or anything like that. So you can't read much into that, but he's raising his left, not his right again. See, George does it first, and Callum's a little reticent. Sometimes in these situations, one boxer does something and the other immediately mirrors it. You know, one steps forward, the other steps forward quickly. One raises his hand, the other does it as well. You know, so as not to be dominated in the body language stakes. When George raises his hand, look at those knuckles. You can see what it does to you. You know, all this repetitive punching. It's damaging that hand. And Callum brings his up, but not with the same vigour and force. Just raises it, and that first shot doesn't even bring it up into shot. And he's shaking his more. He's moving his hand more. So there we are again, and Groves clearly has more stress, more compression in his, he's really making that fist. You can see his suit, his muscles. He's really making that fist. Whereas Callum seems to just be holding his hand in the position of a fist without squeezing it tightly. You can see the damage on the knuckles, just like Groves' hand. You know, it's quite usual for a boxer to have bumps and lumps on their knuckles. But it is hand damage, all the same. So what do you think? Does Callum Smith have a secret injury that he's bringing into this fight? Will it even affect the fight? My personal opinion is no, it won't affect the fight, because even if you are carrying an injury like that, you can do things to subdue the pain for the course of the fight, knowing that you're going to knowing full well you might pay the price later. And when it comes to world title fights, it might be a good idea to pay the price later, to become the world champion, and to be able to cash in as you finish your career on a high. I think that's Smith's plan. And I hope this has been interesting for you boxing fans. I hope I say something that other boxing channels don't. As always, leave a comment, subscribe. I'm going to be taking requests. Put your requests in for videos to be analysed. Leave a comment. I won't reply to any of them.